meetings in the series discussing environmental justice. Tonight, we're going to be talking about food, health services, recreation, air quality, and hazardous materials. And before I turn this over to our consulting team at PlaceWorks, I wanted to just let you know that you have staff support here from Contra Costa County staff. And if I can get everybody to from county to raise your hands or wave. And then I also wanted to let you know, in addition to your staff from the Department of Conservation and Development, we have a number of staff from our hazardous materials program out of the health department. They'll be joining us tonight as we're discussing hazardous materials as one of our topics. So we want to thank them for joining us. When we do when we go into breakout rooms, we will have at least one member of the hazardous materials staff, as well as the Department of Conservation and Development or our PlaceWorks staff in each of those rooms. So again, welcome, and I will turn it over to our PlaceWorks team.
Great, thank you so much, Maureen. My name is Joanna Jansen, and I am with PlaceWorks. We are the consultants leading the Envision Contra Costa 2040 update for the county. Right here at the outset, I want to make an announcement that we do have Spanish interpretation available at this meeting, and I'm going to let Marina, our interpreter, make that announcement in Spanish.
Buenas noches. Para los que necesitan interpretación al español, van a ver un botón como un globito en la parte de abajo de la pantalla. Háganle clic a ese botoncito y escojan español para escuchar la presentación en español. Gracias.
Thank you, Marina. Welcome. Tonight we are here, as Maureen said, to talk about environmental justice in Contra Costa County, and with a specific focus on the topics of food, health services, recreation, air quality, and hazardous materials. I'm going to start in just a minute with a brief presentation. And before we do that, as we're kicking off, we're just starting off each one of these 3 meetings with a quick poll to help us and you understand who is here in the meeting with us. So Lindsay, who's on the screen as Zoom questions, is going to launch a short 2-question poll to help us find out a little bit more about you. You'll have about 60 seconds to respond to these 2 questions. This is optional. You don't have to reply, but we're interested to know a little bit more about you and for you to be able to know about each other. So we want to know whether you're a resident or a business owner or a community, you represent a community organization. You can pick any of these that apply. Select as many as you like. And also a little bit about the geography of who is represented here, something that we're curious about and where folks come from in terms of parts of the county. We'll just watch those responses as they're coming in. Just a couple more seconds here, and then getting ready to end the polling, but we can see that the majority of folks here are residents of the county. We also have some who are representing community organizations, and that you might be residents as well. And I'm happy tonight to see that we do have some good representation from across the county, east, west, and central areas of the county. That's great. Thank you very much to everyone, again, for spending your time here and doing your part to represent your voice and the voice of others in the county. With that, we're going to go ahead and end the polling, and I will move into the presentation. Tanya, who's here as project questions, is going to share her screen. So this presentation is going to give you a brief overview of what we're calling the Envision Contra Costa 2040 project. And I see some familiar faces here from our other past meetings. So thanks so much for coming back, and some new folks too. So this is going to make sure that everyone here has a shared understanding of what we're talking about here tonight. Okay, go ahead, Tanya. As we get started, I just want to reinforce that you are welcome. Your ideas, your thoughts, your questions are very welcome and encouraged. So thank you for being here. On the next slide, we have just a couple of slides that go over the interpretation and how to do that on the computer. This is if you're using our interpretation services. Marina mentioned the globe at the bottom of the screen. Select that and then select the Spanish from the menu of languages that will pop up. If you're doing this on a laptop, or excuse me, a phone or a tablet, I think is on the next screen. Then you use the three dots and go to language interpretation, and then select Spanish from that menu. Next slide. We are going to be asking you to use the raise hand function to indicate if you have a question when we get to the question and answer period of this meeting and just immediately following this presentation. So please do indicate that by using the raise hand feature. Select the participants at the bottom of the screen and then use the blue raise hand feature over there on the right. If you're on a smartphone or a tablet, you're going to use the three dots to select more and then select the words raise hand at the top of that menu. Thank you in advance for that. That helps us keep track of everything. So I am going to keep going through this presentations. Then we have about 10 minutes for questions and answers. The majority of our time here tonight, we want to spend with you in small group discussions. We have a little bit more than an hour for that. We're going to be in breakout rooms, facilitated breakout rooms for those discussions. Then we're going to all come back together at the end of the meeting and hear from you and your small groups and what ideas you generated. And we'll just close with a quick next steps, so you know what's going to happen next. So quick overview for some context of what we're doing here tonight. This is all part of a large project that's called Envision Contra Costa 2040. That project includes three major long-range plans: the general plan, the zoning code, and the climate action plan, as well as an environmental impact report that covers each one of those plans. And the next slide has a little bit more detail about what those are. The general plan, climate action plan, and zoning code work together to guide development and conservation in the unincorporated county. So one thing I always like to reinforce here, because it comes up sometimes as a question in these meetings, is this document and all the documents we're talking about tonight really apply to the unincorporated area of Contra Costa County. The incorporated cities like Richmond or Pittsburgh or Brentwood, they all have their own plans like this, and they all have their own governments and their own decision-making processes. So the county does not govern what happens inside those cities. And it does govern the unincorporated area, and that's what we're planning for. The general plan specifically is focused on development and conservation. The existing general plan was last comprehensively updated in the early 1990s. So it's in need of some update and modernization, although there are some very important ideas in that plan that are still relevant. Throughout the general plan, we're going to be incorporating four major themes that are interrelated across all of the components of the plan. And those include environmental justice, sustainability, community health, and economic development. So we're very focused on environmental justice tonight, but the general plan addresses a broader range of topics. The climate action plan is a plan that sets greenhouse gas emission reduction targets and is focused on reducing greenhouse gas emissions from sources that the county has some control over. So those are things like transportation, energy use, solid waste disposal, construction equipment, agricultural emissions, and those types of topics. And the zoning code guides what can happen on an individual site and how buildings and other structures actually get built, particularly to protect public health and safety. Again, Envision Contra Costa 2040 includes updates to all three of these plans. One of the most important updates that we're making is to bring the general plan into compliance with Senate Bill 1000 or SB 1000, which is a California state law passed in 2016 that requires the county to integrate environmental justice into the general plan. And on this slide, you can see how the state has defined environmental justice. I think of it as really the basic right of people of all races to live, work, go to school, play in a healthy and clean environment. So right now, not all communities and all residents of the county have access to that. And historically, some communities, especially communities of color, have experienced a combination of historic discrimination, negligence, and political or economic disempowerment, with the result that today those communities are really struggling with a disproportionate burden of pollution and health impacts. So we are working to identify those communities and then to develop policies and actions that will help to improve conditions in those communities. The Senate Bill 1000 law terms those communities disadvantaged communities, and that's the language that you'll see in this presentation and in the draft policies that we're reviewing tonight. But we're also very open to other terminology, and some of our past meetings over the past couple of weeks have generated some new ideas for other ways of describing these communities in a way that's both accurate but also empowering. Specific requirements for Senate Bill 1000 ask us to address these topics in impacted communities, that we should reduce pollution exposure and improve air quality, that we promote public facilities, promote food access, promote safe and sanitary homes, and physical activity, and that residents of these communities have access to these important resources. Also, critically, that we engage the community in decision-making. That's a step that has often been left out in the past of asking the residents of these communities what they want, what they need, and how these plans can better serve their communities. And then finally, once we hear from communities about what they want and need, how can we prioritize improvements and programs that address the needs in disadvantaged communities to try to make changes that in many cases are long overdue and bring these communities into greater equity with the other parts of Contra Costa County that aren't facing the same challenges. Tonight, the bulk of our work here is really going to be focused on reviewing some draft policies that are intended to address these topics. Again, this is the third of 3 meetings, and so we're not talking about all the policies tonight. We're talking about our final set. So you have received a link in the chat and also in the email when you registered for this meeting that has those draft policy documents. And that's really what we're going to spend our time focusing on tonight. So those policies are really intended to address situations in the draft disadvantaged communities, again, using the SB 1000 term, which are shown here in orange on this map. These are where we're really focusing our efforts for the purposes of the general plan update. And for each one of these communities, go ahead to the next slide, Tanya. For each one of these communities and as well as other communities in Contra Costa, an important part of the general plan update is delving into more detail about the existing conditions in these communities, the history of these communities, the character of these communities, and compiling data as well as policies and actions that really respond to what we have heard from the residents of these communities. So tonight, those draft policies that I was just describing, those are very much intended to be countywide policies and address all disadvantaged communities in the county. But I just want to make sure you're aware that in addition to these countywide policies, we also do have very specific, very tailored community profiles for each one of these communities. And they're available on the website at the URL that you see in blue at the bottom of your screen there. At envisioncontracosta2040.org. So I welcome and encourage you to take a look at those profiles for your community or any of the other communities in the county. So that's just a little bit of context about what we're talking about tonight. Let me go into a little bit more detail about the policies that we're going to be reviewing. Based on the feedback that we have heard from residents and from advocacy organizations who work in these communities, as well as best practices from other communities that are facing similar issues throughout California, we have been working with county staff to draft environmental justice goals, policies, and actions, and that's what we want your feedback on tonight. So again, a link to the complete draft document is in the chat for this meeting, comes from Lindsay at Zoom Questions. We have a complete set of policy topics, and the next two slides give you a full picture of what those are for environmental justice. Even though tonight we have a narrower focus on just a subset of these. So the full set of topics includes social and economic advantages, healthy food, which is one of our topics for tonight, safe and sanitary homes, jobs and economic stability, community engagement, safe, affordable, and multimodal transportation, public facilities, infrastructure, and services on the next slide, health services, recreational activities and parks, air quality, and safety from hazards and hazardous materials. So that is kind of the full picture of policy topics, and we're going to be focusing on just a few of those tonight. So to remind you of what we have been basing our community input on so far, we have been collecting feedback in a couple of different surveys. These surveys are going to be live through the end of this month, so you can respond to these surveys. You can encourage your friends and neighbors to respond to these surveys. They are available at envisioncontracosta2040.org /survey. We have one that's kind of more big picture and open-ended. And then we have another survey where we go really policy by policy, and you can provide specific comments or feedback on any policy goal or policy or action that's part of the draft document. In addition, we have been meeting with community-based organizations throughout the county to promote this series of meetings and the surveys, and to get some initial input on the policies. And you're going to hear more about some of the input that we've heard as you review these policies with your small group in just a few minutes. So let me say a little bit more about what the small group discussions are going to be like. You're going to be put into small groups or breakout rooms in just a few minutes. We've tried to calibrate the number of small groups to the number of participants so that each group has 6 to 8 county residents as part of it, and you'll be facilitated by a county staff person, and there'll be a note taker there to help you. So your note takers will be recording your comments and showing you the draft policies on the screen for you to discuss and provide your feedback about. We are going to offer one of these small groups in Spanish. Group 5 will be a Spanish speaking group. So please send a message to Zoom Questions. That's Lindsay, if you would like to be in the Spanish speaking small group, group 5. The small group discussions are going to talk about these topics on this slide. We have 20 minutes to talk about access to healthy and nutritious food, 20 minutes to talk about the policies guiding health services and recreation, and then 20 minutes to talk about air quality and hazardous materials. So for each one of those topics, you'll be reviewing the draft goals, policies, and actions that we've worked on so far, and letting us know how we can improve and change those based on your experience and your ideas. As we get ready to break out, I just want to leave us with some conversation guidelines. All of our conversations at these meetings so far have been extremely valuable and productive. So thank you to everyone who's been a part of them so far. When we're in these kind of groups, these topics can be emotional, certainly for some of us, have a really powerful impact on our lives and our health. So as you're listening and speaking, just remember to speak from your own experience. Listen with the goal of understanding each other and respecting differences and being curious about those differences. Let everyone participate, and just remember that your questions are valuable. So if you don't understand something or you're not following the conversation, please don't be shy about asking for clarification or asking for more explanation so that you can participate. These are new topics for many of us. So it's completely normal and understandable. If you have questions, please ask. Finally, I just want to remind you again that if you don't have a chance to say everything you'd like to say tonight, or if you have some more ideas after this meeting is over, we still want to hear from you. Envision Contra Costa 2040.org survey is where you can give us both your thoughts or ideas about some of the overarching concepts in these policy documents, as well as very detailed and specific comments on individual policies and actions. And when you go there, if you want to take that policy level survey, you don't have to respond about every single policy. Maybe there's just one you want to give feedback on. That's fine. Just find that one in the survey and leave us your comment. We very much appreciate it. So with that, it's time for questions and answers. So we're happy to, I am happy to clarify anything that I can, that I just presented, and answer any questions, provide you with any more information before we break out into our small groups. Please do use the raise hand feature to indicate that you have a question. And I'm going to ask Tanya to stop screen sharing now so that we can see each other and see the participant list. Let's see, Andres, looks like you have a question. Please go ahead.
Yeah, so how can you determine the participation by ethnicity and race if it's not registered when you sign up for this workshop and you don't ask the question during one of the polls? How do you determine whether or not you're actually achieving the goal of inclusion?
Yeah, it's a great question, and certainly something that we struggle with in finding the right balance when we ask people to register. So far, we have chosen to make the registration as brief as possible. And certainly, we did hear some feedback earlier on in this process, especially folks who might identify as immigrants or non-English speaking, felt a lot of hesitancy to identify themselves and register themselves for a government-sponsored event. So we wanted to be respectful of that and try to ask as few questions as possible. But you're right that that does sacrifice our ability to know with certainty detailed demographic information about our participants. So in answer to your question, we're not keeping a quantified demographic count of how people identify as they participate in these meetings. But we are tracking our participation in the Spanish language groups, as well as our outreach to various community-based organizations and the populations that they serve in meetings that are separate from this group meeting.
So then you're just going to be guessing based on how somebody looks or by their name?
No, I didn't say that. When folks participate in our Spanish language meetings and groups, we're keeping track of, whether or not we're getting that participation. And again, what organizations that we're partnering with to do outreach and reach people in various neighborhoods that might be of a number of different, identify in several different groups.
All right.
What other questions can I answer?
What would you like to see?
Well, I guess my point is it looks like you are mandated by state law to reach out to a whole variety of groups and get people included in the process. But if you have no way of identifying, even if people self-identified or chose not to self-identify, you really have no data by which to conclude that you've actually accomplished that goal.
The data that we do have is, and I don't have it totaled up right now in front of me to share as part of this meeting, but certainly as part of the general plan and our efforts to document this process is information about the number of meetings that we have held, the locations of the meetings that we have held, including over 20 meetings in these communities that we're talking about tonight, and the attendance at those meetings. In addition, we have been, as I mentioned, going out to meetings of various organizations throughout the county. So these might be tenant organizations or community farm organizations, or a whole range of organizations, and though their topic area, their focus area of those organizations, and the communities that they represent, and the meetings with those groups. So we are working on this, and we're definitely open as part of this conversation for additional ideas on how we can continue to reach people and continue to do a better job. What else can I answer or attempt to answer? I am not seeing any hands come up, which is fine. I hope that means you're excited to get into your small groups. I know we definitely are excited for that part of the evening, and you will have an opportunity to ask your questions in that venue as well. I just want to reiterate a comment that Maureen made early on, which is that we do have county staff from the Department of Development Services, as well as staff from the county's Health Services Department here tonight. And you'll have those representatives in your small group to get your questions answered. Okay, Allison, you want to go ahead?
I was wondering about the homeless population, how they figure in this plan or in this organization.
You're asking how the plan will address the homeless population in Contra Costa?
Yes, and also if they have any way of contributing to the input and the survey.
Sure. So the general plan is required to address housing as one of the elements that it needs to include. And the county, just like all of the jurisdictions in the Bay Area, will be undergoing an update to the specific component of the general plan that's called the housing element. And that element, even prior to the requirements about environmental justice that I'm talking about right now, is required to address housing for individuals that are experiencing homelessness, as well as housing for very low income and low income residents, and housing at all ranges of income, to ensure that the county is providing services and land and programs that can provide housing to that, to all of the members of the community, and including people experiencing homelessness. So that's very much a part of the general plan. And in addition to that, I would just note that we have also talked about the issue of homelessness at, I think, many of the meetings that I've been to as part of the Envision Contra Costa process, including the past 2 meetings and this meeting series focused on environmental justice. Many of the communities that are affected by these issues also have populations and communities of people who are experiencing homelessness. And we've talked in these meetings about the ways in which that affects these communities as well as those individuals. So it has been a theme that we've talked about here at these meetings, and it's going to be addressed as well through the housing element.
Okay, I just wanted to make the point that I think it's important that these people who do not have housing get to participate in the planning and get some input into the kinds of housing that might be provided for them. Because, for instance, in some of the other projects or some of the shelters that have been provided, those people who are homeless do not wish to go there because there is no accommodation for their children or their pets, or they're not appropriate for privacy, or there is no security for what few belongings they still have.
Okay, great. Thank you for that, Allison. I appreciate that input. Andres, do you want to add something else?
Yeah, thank you. Just very briefly, your instructions were that we're looking at the implications for county unincorporated communities. And I'm wondering if we're also available to include the fact that there's like some of the pollution, it's not going to stop at Bay Point. It also spills over into Pittsburgh and Antioch. I'm thinking specifically the PBF refinery. So even though the focus may be on the county unincorporated area, if there was a reduction in their pollution, it would also help communities that are incorporated cities. So is that something that we can also include as an additional benefit?
Sure, I think that's very much a benefit of reducing pollution and improving conditions in these neighborhoods. So you're absolutely right. Any other questions? Just checking for hands over here.
Sorry, so we do have a question that came via chat.
Okay, great, thanks.
And it says, tiny houses, Berkeley and Oakland do, promote tiny houses. So I think the question is whether Contra Costa County is open to tiny homes as a housing solution.
Yeah, that's definitely a topic that's come up. The person is correct that we are seeing this as a housing type and an option in communities around the Bay Area. We talked about the housing policies that are part of this set of policies at our last meeting last Wednesday. And there are some references to tiny homes as part of those policies. Maureen, you want to add something?
Yeah, Joanna, thank you. As Joanna mentioned, we did discuss this topic through the environmental justice meetings last week, but we will also be discussing this as we undertake our housing element, the same as all of the other Bay Area jurisdictions will be doing. They need to update their housing elements by the end of 2022. So we're going to be folding that work into our general plan.
Yeah. Pamela, go ahead, please.
Hi, my question is about the poverty level on each of those orange shaded areas. Do you reflect that for those particular areas? What is the poverty level and percentages and compared to other communities within Envision 2040?
Yeah, sure. Great question. That is exactly the kind of data that you can find if you look at the community profiles that I mentioned on the website. So for each one of the communities that was identified in orange on that map, the profiles have a listing of the state data sources that were used to kind of rate that community to identify whether it meets the state criteria of a disadvantaged community. So that includes things like household income or poverty level, but it actually includes a total of 20 indicators that have to do with health outcomes, pollutant exposure, educational attainment, a whole water quality, a whole host of conditions in each one of those communities. So if you take a look at those profiles, I see that there's a link now in the chat to where you can look at those in more depth. You're going to see much more detail about each one of the communities presented there.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Janet, go ahead.
Okay, let's talk about page 3. Let's talk about the disadvantaged communities and how the state has recognized these percentages according to how the pollution really affects us. I don't know about the other.
Sorry, just to be clear for the benefit of everyone, when you say page 3, you're referring to the policy guidance document, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
disadvantaged community indications 2017, not long after the supervisors okayed the last EIR for Phillips 66. We've got all this information, and how do we control these people that are called supervisors who are not qualified to actually decide on my life in this community and how I should live it? Because the supervisors okay everything Phillips 66 says. How do we control that? I have great expectations on this because the state says all this, 95% of hazardous waste, 76% of, I should have my glasses on. All of the rates are very high on emergency room for asthma, heart attacks, low births for infant. So that's low birth rates at 97%. Our supervisors have a lot of paperwork to read, and I don't expect them to be able to read everything. This is a big county, but we have to push on these items because, and I don't know about the other unincorporated areas, but I do know that there's 5 refineries, so there's other areas just like Rodale and Crockett that are vulnerable to this poisonous pollution that's put out. Greenhouse gases, they claim that they don't, that's not them. But all this other pollution, and this renewable isn't any better because they'll be using crude tar sands and all kinds of ugly stuff as their feedstock. How are we going to control, or how are we going to convince the supervisors that we're in deep trouble in these communities that are right next door on the fence line to the refineries? I mean, I trust the state because all this comes from the state. So how do we're working very hard, and yet the propaganda that comes out of Phillips 66 are lies. I'll call them a liar right to their face. They are lying to the people because the people are suffering. And I believe that the state has said so in this paperwork here. So I have to rely on them. But then again, it's the supervisors who will make a decision. And they made a decision in 2015 to give the refinery the go-ahead for their last EIR, which is still on the books. It's still on the books, although it was illegal. We have no control over these supervisors. Will the state really have the control? Will the federal government really have the control that these refineries should be decommissioned because they're poisoning the people?
Right. Thank you for that, Janet. I appreciate it. We are going to talk about hazardous materials and air pollution tonight. That's a big chunk of the policies that we have. And so I would definitely ask you in your small groups to think about the wording of these policies, the strength of these policies, clear path to implementation and enforcement of these policies, because we are going to be asking the supervisors to adopt these policies or whatever the future form of them is as part of the county's own plan that the county will then be charged with implementing and enforcing. So I think those are really good questions to ask yourselves tonight in the small groups, which I do want to get started because we're about 10 minutes behind schedule and I don't want to cheat you guys out of any of your time for the small groups. But I am told that we have one more chat question. So let's do that and then break into the small groups for more discussion.
Okay, so this last question asks, has the recent Chevron spill been mentioned at all? If not, it needs to be included in the environmental justice conversation for North Richmond and West County.
Great, thank you for that. Yeah, I think this spill actually happened since the time we had this meeting, the second of these 2 meetings last week. So this is our first meeting since that occurred, if I'm right about that timing, but definitely something you can bring up in your groups tonight. And again, like I just mentioned, this concept of hazardous materials and exposure to pollution, whether that's air pollution or water pollution, is definitely part of the topics that we are going to be talking about tonight. So with that, I am going to ask Lindsay to go ahead and put us into our small group so that we have as much time as possible to talk to each other. And I'm going to be hopping around between groups and just observing. So enjoy yourselves and have fun.
All right, hi everyone. You're gonna get a notice in a minute to join a small group. We do have a Spanish-speaking group, so the other groups are gonna be really you're gonna have a lot of different people in your group tonight. It's gonna be a full house. So just 1 second, you'll be getting a notification.
So when you see that notification pop up, just hit join and you'll be in your small group. Thank you so much.
All right. Okay, hi Fred. Let me see here. I think I invited you to go to group 4. Do you want to go to group 4? Did you see that notification?
Yes, I do. Since I participate on a county commission and we've already made some recommendations in our commission, I would just as soon be an observer than participant, if that's acceptable.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Do I hit join just to observe then, but I really don't wish to have to.
Yeah. You don't have to speak. You can join and just let them know that you're there to observe. That's totally fine.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Fred. Yeah, do you want to share your screen or do you want me to share?
I think if you can share, that might be better, if you don't mind.
No, I don't mind at all. Welcome back, everybody. I hope that you had productive and fruitful conversations with your group. I was able to get around to, I think, almost everybody, not quite everybody. But it was really fascinating to hear what you guys were talking about and especially hear a lot of common themes from the groups. And I think you're gonna have a chance to hear that for yourself as we do the reports back. Not to spoil anyone's, oh, hang on just a second, I'm doing this wrong. Not to spoil anybody's surprise, but I think we might hear that some folks want a hospital in West County. So just be prepared for that. Okay, I've got this set up now. Let me share my screen. So we're gonna hear back from each group and we want you to focus on the topics that are shown on this slide. So we're not asking every group to report on every single set of goals that you talked about, but we want to hear from every group about at least 2 of the groups of goals that you guys covered. So this slide is what we're asking you for, and I'll just go down this slide in order in terms of the reports back. So we said this meeting was going to end at 8 and taking the time to answer questions and everything else that we did up front. We're a little bit behind schedule right now. So it's almost 8 o'clock right now. If we ask each one of these groups to report back in about 2 minutes with some of the high level ideas, some of the most exciting ideas that you came up with, then we can get through this without going too far over time. But I really am excited to hear from you guys. So let's start with group 1. And if you guys want to, Lindsay can share the Google Doc on her screen so that you can see your notes in case you just need a reminder. So
Okay,
one.
so with group 1, we have Brandon who's going to identify some of the high level issues. And just to note that we had a robust discussion and we were not able to finish, so.
All right, well, that's okay.
Yeah.
We look forward to hearing what you did cover.
Yeah.
Can I ask that that Mike's comments be put into it even though we didn't get through them?
Michael, I did message Mike and asked him to give those directly to Armando.
Those were important messages he was putting in there.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, so for group one, hopefully I represented correctly. Feel free to weigh in. Teammates who are on the group with me. I think for the food aspect, there was a lot of interest about locally sourced food, some community gardens, especially in certain aspects of the county that are annotated in our report out there. Also discussion around just the importance of affordability in the discussion of this. Also looking at food banks and collaboration, and is there a way maybe the county can subsidize certain things and programs? That's all annotated in there. Also about collaboration with schools and some of the programs of teaching the students how to grow food and then it translate into their school nutrition plan. And then also topic of discussing with business owners, since I don't think we had any on the line tonight, about is there ways that the county can just continue to help with the business environment to try to keep the food affordable if there's any issues there. Moving into the health care side, a lot of interest, obviously, strong advocacy to get the hospital in West County. That was already discussed. Also, the importance of open spaces and parks and encouraging just healthy lifestyles and making that accessible. Also talk about transportation and having access to some of the food sites as well. I meant to mention that. And then what was the last topic our group needed to cover, Joanna?
That you did it because we
Okay.
grouped the food and health. I mean health and recreation there under one.
I do want to ask Maureen, did I miss anything that was really important? I apologize if I did.
Thanks, Brandon.
Good job.
Thank you for that. And one other point that I forgot to make at the outset here, as you're listening, if you want to show your support or your agreement, please feel free to do that using the reactions button across the bottom of your screen. There's a little smiley face with a plus sign, and you can use that to put a little hand clap or thumbs up on your picture and show your support for your group member or another group. Okay, moving on to group number 2, same topics. The first 2 topics that were covered about food and then health and recreation.
So I'm going to give the report back. Everybody in my group politely declined the spokesperson role. So I am going to give a report back. I'm not sure, Lindsay, why it's not showing up on the screen, but I'll just look at my notes on my screen. So on the topic of food, we had a lot of similar ideas as what was discussed in group number 1. In addition, we talked about the need to make sure that there's a clear separation between ag producing lands and oil and gas production, because there is some kind of convolution or they tie those things are tied together in the current general plan and a policy. So we also talked about the importance of community gardens as well, and how we could encourage people to get involved by volunteering and helping with distribution through offering food from those programs to those volunteers. We talked also about affordability of food and things like the food banks being really important. In terms of grocery stores, we talked about how when we're targeting bringing grocery stores to communities, those grocery stores should be tailored and a good fit for that community. On the topic of health services and recreation, we talked about how health services should be really clear, as the processes related to health services should be really clear and simple for people to participate in. And then on recreation in particular, we also talked about transportation access, similar to group number 1, including specifically for seniors, and that being an important thing to think about with access to recreation. So that covers those first 2 topics for our group.
Okay, well done, Tanya. Thank you. Oh, there's the comments. Okay, so we're going to move on to group 3, and so now we're going to switch it up a little bit. So the next 2 groups, groups 3 and 4, we would love to hear from you about health services and recreation, and the last topic, air quality and hazardous materials. So take it away, Nick.
Yep, group 3, we got Nick here.
Great.
Thanks, Nick. Yeah, thanks Daniel and Trish for help with this, putting it together and everything. Yeah, we had a good discussion. We went straight down the topics and then almost had a whole minute to review them. So for health services and rec, the hospital for the West Contra Costa County came up, and that included a trauma center because if you get hurt really bad, they're going to fly you to Walnut Creek, basically out of the area. And we talked about having any of these services located near a hub to give the community access, and just kind of bringing the communities together, and good discussion on all types of health clinics included, not just a hospital. But you can see our edit for streamlining and enhancing zoning requirements instead of minimizing. And a little further down, programs to encourage park and rec accessibility to everyone and funded by the county. And then eliminating in lieu fees, which basically create kind of segregated income housing development. So basically trying to get all sorts of different houses other than just single family houses into developments. And I believe we had, one more there, to commission public art. So murals and walls and electrical boxes and traffic signals. There was an action to kind of survey areas for parks and possible park areas. So maybe the same people could do, while they're doing that survey, kind of survey different things that could be community art projects. Moving on to air quality and hazardous materials. So included with the cumulative health risk assessments for truck traffic. We also threw in health impacts on disproportionately impacted communities when a project potentially affects sensitive receptors in disadvantaged communities, and requiring the best available control technology based on the findings of the assessment. So instead of just appropriate mitigations, which are a little more subjective for who's assessing the assessments and picking the technology, just to push for the best available. A little further down, a distance specific requirement, not allowing within a set distance from a pollution source. We cited examples like, not having a gun store within 1,000 feet of a school or something like that. So having like a set limit instead of just saying as far as possible might help. And requires existing stationary sources of pollution to develop funds to clean up the site when they vacate the site. So the Philadelphia Energy Solution plant on the East Coast, with the explosion and then shutting down and kind of having just an empty plant there. And then monitoring plans with the BA QMD, but also a community emissions reduction program. I believe that was similar to what they have in Richmond. Also seeking new technology to help enact the cleanups and recycle materials on site or reuse the sites for clean reuse. For example, solar power. So a lot of opportunities to put up more solar panels all over the community. And lastly, immediately discontinue internal combustion engine fleets and move to electrical vehicles. So yeah, great group and a great discussion and a lot of good ideas. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you, Nick. Thank you very much, Group 3. Great ideas. I really appreciate the specificity. I can tell you had some knowledge in that group, so thank you for sharing that with us. Group 4, so same topics, health services and recreation, and then air quality and hazardous materials.
Okay, so Group 4, Felicia will be doing our recap. And John, would John be able to share his screen? He took notes on Word.
Yeah.
Awesome, thank you.
Good evening, everybody. We too had a great group, great discussion. We'll share some highlights now, first related to health services and recreation. We hope that the county will, see the beauty of this public shoreline that we have access to, so that activities that may not be heavily promoted can be supported along the shoreline, such as boating and windsurfing. We also want to make sure that opportunities to take advantage of the county's natural resources for recreation are happening in conjunction with community groups who operate in these neighborhoods, so they can introduce folks to these possible recreation opportunities. We also hope that the county will partner with local businesses, because we know that there are other examples where companies have partnered with government agencies to enhance recreational access. In the area of air quality and hazardous materials, we had a lot of great conversation about current projects or current activities versus future projects. We want to make sure that there is sufficient reevaluation of water quality and air quality permits, so that these companies are meeting the latest technological safeguards related to the release of pollution that could be harmful for the surrounding communities. We believe there should be improved air quality monitoring at the refineries in the county. And finally, the county should consider developing an in lieu opportunity for that's similar to what was mentioned in the plan related to recreation, or I think it was recreation facilities, but the county should consider developing in lieu fees from heavy industry associated with their air and water quality impacts to go to support of community benefits. Thanks, everybody.
Beautiful. Thank you very much, Felicia. Thanks to John for taking notes and sharing those. Okay, so group 5, now we're going to switch gears one last time. In group 5, we want to hear from you about the first set, food, and then the last set, air quality and hazardous materials. And that's going to be the same for group 5 and group 6.
Yeah, thank you. So Leticia is going to report back from our group, and she will do so in Spanish. So I'm hoping our interpreter could then report in English. So Leticia, ¿dónde estás?
Hang on just a second. Before we start that, Marina is connected to the interpretation channel.
Can't do that.
People on that channel can hear her. So those of us who are listening on this English channel will not be able to hear her. So I would love to hear from Leticia, but then I would need another Spanish speaker to help us interpret that in English.
Okay, so I'm happy to do that.
Great, thank you.
Sure. So Leticia, si quieres hablar, yo voy a traducir lo que tú dices.
Ok, gracias y gracias a Luz y a Ricky. Fue un grupo donde me sentí muy a gusto y me encantó participar con ustedes. ¿Te doy tiempo para traducir o te lo puedo
Bueno,
decir?
sí, so she first wants to thank us, and she had a very good time in our small group and felt very comfortable. Okay.
Ok, ya. Una de las cosas que quiero decir acerca de la comida, para mí personalmente, el Urban Tilt Farm, creo que es un muy buen inversión o algo muy bueno que sucede en la comunidad. Ellos dan 2 veces a la semana vegetales gratis y frescos y orgánicos a la comunidad, y creo que es un buen beneficio que me gustaría seguir mirando en el futuro.
Okay. One thing that she loves in her community is that Urban Tilth, which is a nonprofit with a community garden and incredible project there. She considers that to be a great investment and would like to see more of that for it to continue. They give free organic food to the community twice a week.
Great.
Puedes continuar.
Ok. Acerca del olor, yo estaba diciendo algo de mi experiencia aquí en norte de Richmond, que es donde yo vivo. Realmente los olores, la calidad del aire es para mi punto de vista muy mala. Días muy seguidos hay unos olores que son no muy agradables, muy seguido que pasa. La otra cosa que yo estaba diciendo, nosotros realmente creo que estamos alrededor de muchas compañías, que es lo del agua, del wastewater, Estamos, tenemos la refinería, tenemos el reciclaje de la basura y muchas cosas que realmente creo que afectan la calidad del aire, especialmente en este lugar. Son demasiadas las cosas que hay, me gustaría ver que haya más, que haya más regulaciones para eso. Realmente es una de las cosas importantes.
So Leticia spoke about her experience in North Richmond and how the community suffers from many smells and very poor air quality. And often the community experiences very bad smells. And she said that there are many industrial sites around the community, including a water treatment facility, a refinery, trash facilities that impact air quality and health. And she wants more regulations and stricter regulations and control of that. Ok, muchas gracias, Leticia. Creo que eso es todo el tiempo que tenemos para reportar. I think that was it from our group.
Okay, gracias, Leticia. And thank you very much, Luz, for translating, sharing your multilingual abilities with us. I really appreciate it. All right, group 6. Same 2 topics, food and then air quality and hazardous materials. Go ahead. Who are we hearing from group 6? Maureen? Let's get you unmuted.
Is that good?
Yep.
Boy, this was so hard. And there were so many good ideas from so many people. And this has just been great. But so let's talk about food first. There were one request is that we have food options that are near transit areas, balanced with healthy foods. And another one was we're zoned for agricultural purpose. Are we? And rooftop gardens was a question mark. And then vending machines, that we can have fresh foods in vending machines. I think that's an ongoing thought for a lot of people. So that was kind of under health foods. Let me just go through my notes here. So let me just switch over to air quality stuff. Oh boy, I think right off the bat was Ellen Barrett, and I love her for this, was questioning the odor concept. Do we have regulations for odor in the community? Because and personally I am concerned about this because they're going to be bringing a lot of animal fat into the Rodeo Renewed concept, and it could smell like hell. And do we have odor quality kind of regulation? So that's important to me, and it came up in our discussion. Lindsay also mentioned water quality. With the new Rodeo Renewed concept, there's going to be some nasty wastewater runoff. So that's a concern. Let's see, more local community included with the 617 concept. I think that's, well, anyway, I won't tell you my personal feeling, but it's kind of out the door. Let's see. And, another thing is developers pay impact fees, right? And, how are these impact fees used? Do they go back to my community in Rodeo or Pacheco or whatever in unincorporated place? But that was a question mark. Let's see. I think that kind of, I'm sorry, I think I'm missing a whole bunch of our discussion, but it was really great. Thank you.
Yeah, that's okay. You don't have time to repeat the whole discussion here. I see another comment about buffer zones. So I think we might have seen that from several groups about maybe more specificity about separation between uses, as that's just one example of common theme that I can already see emerging even from these very brief reports back. So thank you very much. It sounds like there was really in-depth and very informed discussions from all 6 of the groups. And I know this is a lot of material to tackle, and I know a lot of these topics are very complex, and I know that many of you have a lot of knowledge to share about a lot of these topics. So I want to just thank you very much and express my admiration and respect for you getting through these policies and actions and helping us to refine and strengthen them. So let me share my screen again, and we will talk very briefly about next steps before we wrap up and let you guys all get on with your evening. So we are, this is the 3rd of our 3 meeting series to go through these policies with the community. So thank you again for being part of that. The next step for us on these policies is to go to a meeting with the Sustainability Commission. That is a standing commission of the county. These are public meetings, and their next meeting is on February 22nd, so coming up on Tuesday. And we will also have those surveys open.
Excuse me, Joanna.
Yeah.
It's Monday. The
I'm
meeting is
sorry.
on Monday from 5
Thank you.
to 7. I staff that meeting. We're happy to see you all. The agenda will be posted at some point tomorrow. If you're not on the list, let me know and we'll get you on the list.
Monday.
Monday.
Be there, be square.
And I want to thank several members of our Sustainability Commission who are here tonight, including Mike Moore and Shoshana Wexler, and maybe a couple more. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much for correcting me. I apologize for getting that wrong. Monday, the 22nd, the Sustainability Commission is going to be meeting. We will be there to give them a brief update on this meeting series and some of the feedback that we have heard so far. Again, also in February, these surveys are still open at envisioncontracosta2040.org. So if you didn't get to share all your input tonight, or if you know additional folks who would like to give input, that's there for you. After that, in March, we will be going to a meeting of the Board of Supervisors Sustainability Committee. That's a subgroup of the Board of Supervisors. I know many of you here tonight have expressed interest in seeing some action from the board. So this is one meeting that they'll be having to talk about this topic on March 22nd to review and consider some of the feedback from these meetings. And then going forward, our next step with these policies is to take your input that we've heard here tonight and incorporate it into the policies and continue to work with staff across multiple departments at the county to refine these and integrate your input as well as staff knowledge to get to feasible and implementable policies and actions. And those will be shared out in the draft general plan. So we had a really deep dive on these topics tonight, but it's also important to bear in mind that ultimately they will be folded into the overall general plan where you can see them in connection with policies about many other topics, policies about land use, policies about hazards and safety, policies about open space preservation. All of those things are going to work together, and you can really see the environmental justice policies play out on the larger stage of the draft general plan. We're going to be working on that over most of 2021, and then it will be out for public review for quite a while before it is considered by the board for adoption. And as well, we're also going to be publishing the draft climate action plan and the draft EIR that I mentioned earlier in the presentation. So please keep in touch with us. So there's some helpful links on this slide, and we're going to be putting those in the chat as well. Main link, if you don't remember any of the other links from tonight, envisioncontracosta2040.org. If you go there, you can find all of the other stuff that we've been talking about tonight, the surveys, the community profiles. One opportunity that we're offering right now is anybody who wants to upload a video. Could be a video of you saying your piece, a video of you taking us on a tour of your neighborhood. What do you want us to know about your perspective or your community that we can reflect in the general plan? So You can go to the envisioncontracosta2040.org and upload a video if you'd like to. And then again, if you want to keep reviewing these draft policies that we looked at tonight, or the draft community profiles that I referenced, those are again at envisioncontracosta2040.org documents. Please do use those links and please keep in touch. We value your time, we value your energy and your knowledge and your ideas, and we would love to keep hearing from you. So again, at the website, you can sign up to be on the email list. You will get notified whenever we have a meeting or publish a new document. And Will Nelson is the county's project planner. Will had a family commitment tonight, and I know he was trying to listen in, even though you might not have heard from him. But this is his email address and his telephone number if you would like to get in touch. And Lindsay, I see that you have your hand up. Go ahead, please.
Sorry, I was just chatting with someone. I just wanted to connect with another participant and didn't have a venue to do that.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to throw it out there. Maureen, can we be friends?
Lindsay, I think you messaged me, but I think you mean to message the other Maureen. I was just starting.
I did. I saw it. I'm sorry.
That's
So this
okay.
is like, I can do Maureen or Lindsay. If you send me your email address, I can share that with the other Maureen in the chat. Does that sound good?
Sure.
That is perfect. Thank you so much.
And while
Yeah.
Lindsay, you had a question about the path from Rodeo to Hercules, and the other Maureen who just spoke up has informed me that we don't know the schedule on completing that, but we do know it's happening.
I'll take it. Thank you.
Okay, I see a raised hand also from Leticia.
Hi, sorry, I have just a question. I'm just curious about, it's about North Richmond and the zoning, or I just wanted to have an idea or to hear from you, how will impact the recommendations that we have for 2040? How would impact if they are gonna be enforced until in some years, and by then, like North Richmond is getting a lot of business here around, and they already have the permits to stay here, how
Right.
would that gonna impact? I mean, is there gonna be a change, or what is gonna happen?
So I think your question, Leticia, is about land uses in North Richmond, and we didn't talk about any of the individual communities in depth because we were focused on countywide policies, and we didn't talk about the land use map, but those things are in the community profiles. You're right in your comment that in North Richmond in particular, a lot of the vacant land there is, some of it is already entitled. That means a business has gotten permission to build a specific project. And once that permission is given, it's not really legal to take it away, even if the thing hasn't been built yet, or that's the very difficult process. And then there are some vacant lands that maybe still be in process where the final decision hasn't been made yet. So you're right that what is on the ground today will change over time, and some of those decisions might be decisions that have already been made, and others may still be able to be influenced. So I would refer you to check out the North Richmond community profile on envisioncontracosta2040.org, and that has a lot more specificity about North Richmond and the future there.
Can I ask a similar question for Rodeo? What, we have a lot of public land here that is open and being sold off right before our eyes. And how do we know what that public land is for the community and et cetera?
Maureen, if you want to contact me, I have some projects that I'm working on, both next to the Rodeo Senior Housing Project and the town center. So I can update you on that. And I will be at the MAC meeting next week. And I can also go over that at that time as well.
I thank you for that. Good.
All right, folks, I want you to thank you for sticking with us here. Our meeting went over time, but I really am grateful for the time that you spent with us this evening. and for sharing your discussions with each other and with us. Thank you very much. I do hope you will keep in touch. I hope you'll let your friends and neighbors know about Envision Contra Costa 2040. We will see you at our future meetings. Thank you
Good
very
night, Felicia.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Gracias, Leticia.